half an hour clips. So I was on. So I don't believe Suge Knight came up with his blood mob Pyru entourage to beat up Easy. That's not what was said in the book. I'm going off the book here. I think Suge basically told Jerry Heller Easy weren't there. Because there's loads and loads of interviews on this. There's loads. So Easy weren't even there, and Dre weren't there, or that guy that was dating Mariah Carey, the owner of Sony Entertainment. None of these guys were there. Basically, Suge came in with his Mob Pyru guys. There's one Mob Pyru member. He does a podcast, I think, called Mob James or something. A couple of his goons were there, and basically kind of intimidating, and sat down with Jerry Heller and said, Dre is leaving. We're starting a new company and Dre's coming with us, and you're signing the contract to release Dre right now. So Jerry Heller actually signed the contract. Easy weren't there. When Easy found out about this, Easy was fucking livid and wanted to kill Suge Knight. Basically, was fucking really pissed off and Easy, and the Southside Crip story to this as well, as Easy was ready to fucking kill Suge Knight. Easy weren't scared of Suge Knight, I'm telling you. Easy weren't. Everyone else might have been scared of Suge Knight, but Easy weren't scared of Suge Knight. And I don't think Suge Knight would have been able to shake Easy down. Easy had street credentials, I'm telling you that. So they get Dre to release, but Easy files a lawsuit saying it was under harassment, which was very smart of Easy to do. Easy was a very smart business guy. Very smart business guy. So Easy basically filed a RICO Act against Suge Knight and Death Row Records before they even released the first album, Dr. Dre The Chronic. Followed the RICO Act, and whatever Dre made off any album, what Death Row Records made off any album, Easy would have like, I think 5-10% of that. So Dre Day only matches Easy's payday. So Easy would get paid like 10% for every Death Row album sold. Basically, so Easy made a smart business move there. Now we'll get into the origins of Death Row. Basically, this guy from the Bounty Hunter Bloods in Watts, Nickerson Down projects or Jordan Down projects, the worst areas in South Central to live, worse than Compton. Is where rap group OFTB are from. I like OFTB. If you ever heard of OFTB, they later signed to Death Row. They were like the most hardcore rappers out of any of them. The Flipster! Flipside! So what I was going on to? So yeah. This guy called Harry O was like Freeway Ricky Ross. He was making some big money on the streets. And only 26 years old, he's like a millionaire who's selling crack nationwide, like different states all over. Harry O was. He actually started a Broadway play and introduced Denzel Washington to his first role, the legendary actor Denzel Washington. But Harry O got locked up on various drug cases that he had. And he knew Suge Knight, I think he knew Suge Knight from the streets or whatever. And Suge Knight being who he was at that time, Suge Knight was making moves, he was getting more into the gangster stuff, you know. He was getting more into, you know, becoming a Mob Pyru. Like he used his childhood friends who were real Mob Pyrus, basically, to back him up and get things done. Not saying that Suge weren't a fucking tough guy. Suge was a big fucking hard, motherfucking rough tough guy you wouldn't want to fuck with anyway. But I think Suge really like took over the Mob Pyru Bloods and basically made them work for him. And he was like the kingpin. So Suge I don't know how he did it, but he got this really, really great lawyer called David Kenner, who actually was a mob lawyer for the Genovese family, to sort out all his legal issues, because Suge had a lot of illegal issues, shit that he did. I'm not going to get into all the shit that Suge Knight fucking did, because he's done so much fucked up shit. But saying that, Suge Knight basically started the best record label ever. I mean, Death Row Records was just a super team. It was like the Chicago Bulls of the 90s, the Manchester United of the 90s, that team. And it was because of Suge Knight, because he didn't give a shit. Suge Knight weren't one of these guys who would bow down to any corporation, you know, and that's what I respect about Suge Knight, is he wouldn't take no shit from these fucking white fucking record labels, these corporate record labels. Suge Knight would say, it's either if we don't fucking do this, we're coming in and we're kidnapping your fucking family, we're gonna fucking, you know, you're gonna get hurt, we're gonna show some violence, we ain't taking shit. And to being a black man from the ghetto, it's like, fucking hell, you want Suge on your team, because Suge gets things done, and Suge got things done, and especially for Dr. Dre. When Dre made The Chronic, he hooked up with Jimmy Iovine and to distribute his record. Hooked up with Jimmy Iovine. He basically owned the company. He was 50-50. It was him and Dre's company. So Dre owned 50% and Suge owned 50% of the company. So now we go to the LBC. Go to Snoop D-O-double-G. And Snoop was like he was good friends with Warren G, and Warren G was Dre's stepbrother. And basically Warren G wanted to get into the music industry. Snoop was like, I think, according to various sources, he was a rolling 20s crip and shit like that, and his cousin Daz, like Daz Dillinger, and he was a part of a group called 213. He went to jail and stuff like that, but then he really wanted to focus on his rap thing. So Warren G had the hook up to Dre, and Dre heard Snoop's tape from the 213 from him, Warren G, and Nate Dogg. And Dre fucking loved it. He was like, who is this Snoop? This guy is amazing. We need Snoop on his team. Even though he was a Crip and Death Row Records were made out of Bloods, they couldn't refuse that. So basically that record label had Bloods and Crips together. Whether they were rival gang sets or whatever, it didn't matter. They were there to make music, and they got along. So Snoop brought his Crips from Long Beach, people like Nate Dogg, the Dog Pound, Warren G, RBX, the Lady of Rage, yeah, people like that, and many others that came from the LBC came, and they were Crips. Another guy, Trey D, yeah, Trey D, and all them, and that's how they made The Chronic. And Snoop is like the co-star of The Chronic. Basically, he's on most songs, assisting Dre with his songs. I mean, when The Chronic came out, that's when when NWA came out and Ice Cube was doing his solo shit, it was big. But The Chronic fucking elevated that like 100 times more when The Chronic came out. It brought West Coast rap to the top. That West Coast rap took over the whole fucking rap game. I mean, Dre created the bomb of The Chronic. There was no turning back. The West was on top. Now the stories in Original Gangstas, there's a group that worked for Easy called Above the Law. So this is a little highlight. They're the actual guys who started G-Funk. Cold, 187, Cocaine, and them rappers. Great group. They actually started the G-Funk era. And he did a song called Call It What You Want. And actually, on that song, Tupac's on that song. And he calls, I call it G-Funk, but you can call it what you want. So Tupac actually is the first person who said G-Funk. What Above the Law actually were the guys who first produced the G-Funk, but Dre was taking the credit for it, kind of thing. But it didn't really matter though, because Dre elevated that shit so much. I mean, that album, you can't, no matter how that album got made, or if Dre, you know, may not have created G-Funk and Above the Law did, it didn't matter, because that album just took over the whole shit. It was such a classic album, one of my favourite rap albums of all time. And basically, the best song on there for me is Let Me Ride. It's just one of them summer tunes that I can ride in a car to and just relax. And it's a very relaxing type album. It was a smooth, the beats were just fucking amazing, and it was a very smooth album. It had a bit of hardcore tracks on there, like the end with the gun, and some social track like Little Ghetto Boy and Dazed Unchanged. But These Nuts, Nothing But a G Thing, that was a popular song on that. Fuck With Dre Day where he dissed Easy, and some other New York rapper and Luke from the 2 Live crew. And the world got introduced to Snoop Doggy Dogg. And people love Snoop Doggy Dogg, the rapper. He could just murder a beat to pieces. Snoop back in the day was fucking amazing. I don't care what anyone says about Snoop. Snoop back in the day was the fucking, just the illest. The flow that he came out with, his style, it just blew me the fuck away. And especially when we first got introduced to Deep Cover, it's 187 on a motherfucking car. Yeah, and you don't stop. That's a classic. That came out around the same time as The Chronic. That was the movie of Lawrence Fishburne. Played undercover cop in that movie. Got deep into it. It's a good movie actually. I recommend that. Yeah, so we move on to 93. Dre The Chronic sold like 5 million. Biggest rap album on the street. West Coast rappers dominating the whole shit. Then it's time for the main guy, the main co-star on Dre's album, the man that the people everywhere are buzzing about, is Snoop Doggy Dogg. It's time for him to come out with his solo album. While he's recording this solo album, in the summer of that year, he gets charged with a murder, or being accessory to murder. Now there's different stories about this. Basically, he was in Long Beach, and this Ethiopian guy, I think, called Philip Wardamarian, was throwing up gang signs and like baiting Snoop, like really like aggravating Snoop, like, you know, intimidating Snoop, and Snoop felt intimidated. There's 2 stories to this. There's the Philip Wardamarian was throwing up gang signs, and Snoop then thought, because he was still like cripping a bit, came back with his bodyguard, and Snoop may have previous problems with this Philip Wardamarian guy, and his bodyguard he came back and the murder was premeditated. He shot him. But there's another story saying that the Philip Wardamarian was aggravating Snoop, throwing up gang signs, and then followed Snoop. Snoop was in the car with his bodyguard. I believe Dre was actually in the back seat of the car, according to the book. And basically, the Philip Wardamarian pulled out a gun, according to Snoop's side of the story and Death Row's side of the story, and Snoop bodyguard shot him dead. But basically, Snoop now was wanted for murder. And this is the crazy part, is Snoop was turning up for MTV Awards. Watch the MTV Awards 1993. It's fucking crazy. Snoop is there accepting awards with Dre, but the police are there ready to arrest him for fucking murder. He might be going down for life, right? And he's fucking there just fucking accepting awards at the award show. Suge Knight made a deal with the cops or something like that to let him do the award show, then take him afterwards. And that's crazy, man. I can't just imagine what was going through Snoop's head at the time, knowing that, yeah, after this award show and he's promoting Doggy Style and the whole world's waiting on Doggy Style, but he could be going to jail for the rest of his life for murder. I mean, what the fuck was going through Snoop's head at that award show? You must watch that award show and look at Snoop's face. I can't believe he could keep it together, to be honest. All the cats can suck on these fucking nuts. That's what I say. But yeah, Suge, the way he was, bailed Snoop out. Suge Knight could make things happen, and Suge did that. Now we have the bomb, Doggy Style. Now Doggy Style is the another G-Funk classic. It's different from the Chronic as it's more upbeat. It's more party. It's more of a fucking album that you can party to. Every single fucking song on that album is fucking classic. Every song from top to bottom. There's not one song that is dull on that album. And that I think is one of the only rap albums where not one song is dull. Every song you can dance and party to on that song. So it's a Chronic, G-Funk Chronic, but the Chronic was more like laid back and slow, and Doggy Style was more upbeat, up-tempo type of stuff that you could like bob your head, more fucking, party to. I mean, when that album came out, it was the fastest selling debut album of any musician of all time. It sold 1 million in its first week, and Death Row Records was fucking over the moon. It was, took over the whole fucking music industry at that time. And just every song on that album was a classic. It's one of my favourite rap albums. It's more I can't say what my best rap album is because there's so many good ones. And at the end of the day, there were so many gangster rappers coming out at that time, even from the East. And everywhere, from Sacramento, you had X-Rated and Brother Lynch, you had Oakland, you had Too Short and Spice One and Richie Rich. And obviously Tupac was doing his thing as well. Digital Underground. So, but Snoop was on top. 93, Snoop was on top. By far, Snoop was the best rapper in the world at that time. And that album was just a fucking classic. Now, I'll get into Easy, what Easy did afterwards. Easy stayed quiet for a bit after the Chronic. He didn't really, he weren't as successful as Dre and Snoop were, but if you're talking about straight disses and his response to Dre Day on its own 187 Dr. Dre Killer, he's got all his nutty block Crips behind him and all that shit, and that song Real Motherfucking G's, man, that just kills it. That's one of my favourite diss tracks of all time. Oh yeah, I forgot Ice Cube's one as well, No Vaseline, where he disses NWA, that one as well. No, that's a crazy diss song. You can tell Easy is showing pictures of Dre in the way he used to be dressed up in his little fucking gay suit that he used to wear when he was with the World Class Wrecking Crew. He's showing that and showing that Dre and Snoop are like studio gangsters. I mean, at the time, Dre kind of changed. He was a studio. He never was a gang member, Dre. He never did that stuff, to my knowledge. I mean, Snoop was kind of just a laid-back guy, Easy was straight street, motherfucker. It was the Suge Knight and his Mob Pyru Bloods that were, the strong arm for Death Row. But Easy, just from a street rap level, real motherfucking G's. He absolutely murdered Dr. Dre on that. That response just fucking killed Dre Day completely. I mean, he weren't, Easy weren't as big. He didn't make millions, he didn't sell millions, but he made millions. He was doing other business things. He was creating Ruthless Radio. He was actually creating a video game like Grand Theft Auto. He was doing various stuff. He was a great businessman, Eazy-E. And he was looking for new acts as well. And obviously he found one of the greatest groups of all time, eventually, Bone Thugs and Harmony, which is one of my favourite groups of all time after the Wu-Tang. So that was Eazy's response. Now we get into Death Row. Obviously the Mob Pyrus are there, and a lot of beatings were happening at that studio. It was more like it weren't really a workplace, to be honest. It was more like a fucking gangster party. You know, you had Bloods and Crips and everyone there, and if Suge Knight didn't like what you did, or you know, people would get beat up, producers and people like that, or rappers that came in that weren't good enough, they'll just get their ass whooped. I mean, Death Row were no joke. They hurt a lot of people. I mean, you had to be on your fucking toe if you're in that studio, and if you weren't Dr. Dre or Snoop and you didn't have great fucking producing or rap skills, man, and you weren't a straight up street guy. I mean, you were pretty much fish for the sharks to have. I mean, Suge Knight would just fucking and his goons would brutalise you, strip you naked, beat the shit out of you. He had a dog who was threatened to eat him, and he had some piranhas in his office. His office was painted in red, illuminated with Death Row. He ran the fucking record label like a mafia boss. But a lot of the people that I work with are straight up fucking, they had that gangbanging mentality that were working for Suge. I'll name some of the guys that he hired that I've heard of. Some real fucking straight up street guys that was nothing to do with the music, but they did help with the logos, and they helped with the designing the logos and everything like that. So they did have a legitimate part, and he did give legitimate jobs to these Mob Pyru guys, but at the same time he was doing shady, I think he was doing some shady shit with them, like drug deals and extortion and shit like that. That's what came out in a lot of documentaries and stuff like that. I mean, there was Buntry. He was one of his main guys, Buntry. A big fucking scary black guy, Buntry. Hen Dog, Neckbone, Big Jake, Heron. Well, that guy was on the podcast, or was it Mob James? I think he ran a hydraulic shop called Let Me Ride. And obviously Snoop, and he had his, like, Trey D weren't no joke. He had the insane Crips from Long Beach. Snoop had them. I mean, it was a wild place full of gangbangers, and people got shot in that studio, beat up, stabbed, fucking you name it. But they came out, started making more records, signing new artists, signed Danny Boy, which I think would have been the next Michael Jackson if his album really hit. I think Suge adopted Danny Boy. He was only 16. He adopted him. Sam Snead, he was from Philadelphia, came in. He was a great rapper. He ended up though getting severely beat up later on in Death Row, in that story I remember. I think that's when Tupac was on Death Row. But there was a story going out. This is why Snoop was still on trial, and they were doing like great soundtracks for Murder Was the Case, which is a classic soundtrack, and Above the Rim soundtrack. And I think the Mob Pyroos were basically planning to rob Suge Knight. So that's when Suge Knight basically would give him money to shut him up, and then he hired that's when he started hiring cops like David Mack and Reggie Wright, who was a former cop, and created Right Way Security. Because according to Reggie Wright, that's why they were hired, to stop Suge's guys like Buntry and all them and Mob James from robbing everything, because the record label was worth millions, and the word was they were trying to rob Suge Knight. So yeah. So he goes on death row through 93, 94, successful as hell. But obviously Snoop has got his trial and everything, and Dre kind of slows down. I don't think Dre really likes the atmosphere, because obviously Dre is a straight musician. Dre is, and I like that about Dre, is he's straight, I want to make music. And there's another reason I'll get into later about that, about Dre, how he left and all that. But as this was happening, New York was coming up with its, for ages though, New York was doing gangster rap, but it just weren't as big as the West Coast. The difference was when Puffy came out with Bad Boy Records, and the notorious B.I.G. came out with Ready to Die. The difference was, say with other New York rappers like the Wu-Tang and Nas and Redman and Smith and Wesson and Mobb Deep and all them, the difference was why Biggie blew up so much was because he put hits, radio hits for the ladies, like commercial hits, as well as street shit, Brooklyn street shit. And Biggie's flow was just fucking, no one can flow as well as Biggie. No one can lyrically flow as well as Biggie. His metaphors and his mathematical type flow was unbelievable. And that Ready to Die album is a fucking classic. But what made it big was obviously Biggie. I think he got it from Tupac actually. Tupac told him, you gotta make records for the radio, or you're just gonna be another mixtape rapper. So Biggie made like Big Papa and Juicy and One More Chance, and Biggie blew the fuck up. I mean, in 95, Biggie blew the fuck up. Biggie was the main rapper, like really massive. And my brother remembers this, and Biggie was all over every radio station, doing tours and everything like that. And yeah, Biggie was the man. Even, people say Illmatic's the best rap album and shit like that. But obviously Biggie, because it's commercial shit, And Snoop was on his trial, so Snoop couldn't make a follow-up album. And Dre was producing less. But now, we'll go to something else. Now, here when Tupac comes into the picture. Tupac was always around since the early days, since I think he first came out in 91. I'm not going to get into Tupac's story because what they did with that movie All Eyes on Me was bullshit. I mean, you cannot make a movie about Tupac. You can't, because he's had such an eventful life. He was only 25 when he died. So he had like fucking 80 lives, 100 lives. He experienced so much in his short life than most people would experience in 80 fucking lifetimes. Seriously. And live to an old age of 90 years old. Tupac lived that life, so you'd have to make a big Netflix series, about Tupac's life. But yeah, Tupac was always about, did Juice, and that's what really put him on the map. People was thinking, is this guy really Bishop? I mean, that's his best role that he played as an actor, is when he played Bishop in Juice, straight stone cold, fucking psychopathic fucking killer. I mean, I was blown away by that performance of Bishop. I was like, fucking hell, man, this guy is no joke. But people actually thought that's who he was. People misunderstood Tupac, thinking he was actually that guy. But then other people, like hardcore people, knew Tupac, saw a different side to Tupac. I mean, most rappers were just talking gangster shit and like that. Tupac was actually, putting out really. He was putting out gangster stuff, but it was more. It was more real. It was like telling you. It's like these movies, these Hollywood movies. They glamorize violence, and it's the movies that show you the violence, but show you the consequences of it. And the real life consequences if you do get involved in shit like that. It's like Hollywood movies do that shit all the time. And Pat was a rapper who you could tell by his voice, the way he expressed himself, that he really lived that life, and you could see the real consequences and the tragedy of his upbringing, and his a lot of his lyrics. And the song Brenda's Got a Baby, it just touches my heart, that song. Part-Time Mother. I mean, Tupacalypse Now came out. It weren't a big album, but it put Pac on the map as being different from any other rapper, with songs like Brenda's Got a Baby. Then in '93, Tupac kind of went up the chart a bit. Snoop was the biggest rapper in the world in '93, but Tupac were not far behind, because Tupac came with his second album, Strictly for My Niggaz. And that album had hits on it, and that's why Biggie did Ready to Die, because Pac had I Get Around on that album. And obviously, he still had his social, really spiritual songs on there, like Keep Your Head Up and Papa's song. And so there's his raw street songs like How If You Hear Me, Streets of Death Row, and songs like that. That was a classic album, his second one, and that's what put Tupac in the map as far as music was. So Tupac was up there, well known, and that's when Death Row really wanted him, because Tupac was going through all these crazy fucking legal troubles, and at the time Tupac was all over the news for fucking everything, for getting beat up by the police, for the shooting, the Marin City incident, fucking the shooting of the two cops, just loads of incidents. He was always in court, but he lived on the west, so he actually lived in LA, and Death Row was very interesting, but he wanted to do his own thing with Thug Life. And obviously when he went to the east, he hung around with one of the main guys who was always with Big Stretch from the Live Squad. Was always with him, Stretch from the Live Squad. And you know what happens with Tupac. I'm not going to explain a lot. Obviously, he had that rape. After he shot them two cops, I mean, come on, man. The police wanted to get him. That's why they set him up on that bogus rape shit with Haitian Jack, I think, was maybe behind that. Or Skate.